Family, there are moments in life when we are praying, fasting, and believing for a breakthrough, yet it feels delayed. Not because God is unwilling, but because he loves us too much to bless us beyond what our character can carry. God doesn't just hand us a breakthrough, he prepares us for it. And very often, he will reveal what's standing in the way, not to condemn us, but to free us. Breakthrough doesn't start when circumstances shift, it starts when God opens our eyes. Too often, we pray for God to change the situation around us while overlooking what he wants to change within us. We think if the bills are paid, the sickness leaves, or the door of opportunity swings open. That's the breakthrough. But God's pattern throughout Scripture shows us something deeper. Before he moves mountains on the outside, he first removes blinders on the inside. True breakthrough begins with revelation, when God shines his light on what we could not see by ourselves. Think about it. If God were to hand us the blessing we've been asking for without first showing us the things in us that could sabotage it, that blessing would become a burden. He reveals because he loves. He exposes because he wants us free. Revelation is not punishment, it's preparation. It is God saying, I want to trust you with more, but I can't until you see what's standing in the way. That moment of recognition, that moment when your eyes are opened, is the seed of breakthrough. There's something powerful about God's light. It reaches into the hidden corners of the heart, not to condemn us, but to equip us. Many people resist revelation because it feels uncomfortable. It can sting to realize that bitterness is still lodged in your heart, or that fear is quietly steering your decisions, or that pride is blocking intimacy with God. Yet, it's in that moment that you can finally do something about it. You cannot conquer what you refuse to see. That's why revelation is the first step into freedom. Let's be honest. Sometimes we are praying for external change while God is whispering about internal transformation. We say, Lord, fix this relationship. He says, let me heal your unforgiveness. We say, God, open this financial door. He says, let me deal with your trust in money instead of me. We say, Father, remove this anxiety. He says, let me reveal where fear has been sitting on the throne of your heart. Until we see what he sees, we won't walk in what he promises. Here's the beauty. When God reveals something, it's not because he's pointing out your flaws. It's because he's pointing to your freedom. He knows what's holding you back. He knows what the enemy is using as a foothold in your life. And when he reveals it, he's giving you the power to break agreement with it. The same God who says, here it is, also says, now let's deal with it together. For example, imagine a man who had been praying desperately for a promotion at his job. He believed this advancement was his breakthrough. Week after week, month after month, nothing happened. Frustrated, he cried out, God, why haven't you moved? Then one day during prayer, God revealed to him that envy and comparison had been festering in his heart. He wasn't just longing for a promotion, he was measuring his worth against others, resenting their success, and tying his identity to his title. The Lord showed him, if I gave you the promotion now, it would only inflate your insecurity. It wouldn't bless you, it would break you. That revelation was painful, but it was also freeing. He repented, surrendered his heart, and asked God to redefine his identity in Christ, not in his career. Months later, the promotion came. But this time, he was ready. He didn't carry envy into that new season. He carried gratitude and humility. His breakthrough started the moment his eyes were opened, not the moment the promotion was announced. That's how God works. He reveals before he releases. He opens our eyes before he opens the door, because revelation is not just about information, it's about transformation. The moment God shows you what you couldn't see is the moment your breakthrough begins. When God reveals something in your life that needs to change, it is never to humiliate you. He is not a harsh judge waiting for you to fail so he can point an accusing finger. He is a loving Father who longs for his children to walk in wholeness, peace, and freedom. That's why his revelations are not for shame, but for healing. He knows that the very thing we keep hidden, or the very habit we excuse, is the thing that is slowly draining life out of us. So, in his kindness, he shines his light on it, not to embarrass us, but to rescue us. Shame pushes us away from God, but conviction draws us closer. Shame says, you are broken beyond repair. Conviction says, hair is what's holding you back, and I'm here to heal it. The enemy uses exposure to condemn, but God uses revelation to restore. That's the difference. One voice leaves you stuck, the other voice sets you free. When God puts his finger on something in your life, pride, fear, unforgiveness, compromise, it's not because he's tired of you, but because he wants more life flowing through you. The truth is none of us sees our own hearts clearly. We all have blind spots. We might excuse an attitude, justify bitterness, or ignore unhealthy patterns because they feel normal to us. But when the Spirit of God reveals them, it's like a surgeon showing you the X-ray. Imagine going to a doctor who finds a tumor but hides it because he doesn't want to offend you. That would not be love, that would be neglect. Love says, here's the problem, but here's the good news. We can remove it. That's exactly how God works. His correction is never meant to crush you. It's meant to heal you. And what he reveals, he always intends to remove. If he shows you a root of fear, he is offering you courage. If he exposes unforgiveness, he is inviting you into freedom. If he highlights pride, he is leading you toward humility that brings true promotion. The very act of revelation is evidence that he's already prepared the grace to help you overcome it. He never points out a wound without also offering the medicine to heal it. Let me give you an example. A woman I once knew had been praying for deeper intimacy with God, but she always felt stuck, like there was a wall she couldn't get past in prayer. She fasted, she read her Bible, she worshiped, but that wall never moved. Then, during a quiet time, God gently brought a memory back to her mind, a betrayal from years ago that she had never forgiven. She realized she had carried resentment toward that person for a long time. At first, she felt ashamed, thinking, how could I still hold on to this after all these years? But God quickly reminded her that he wasn't bringing it up to shame her, he was bringing it up to heal her. That memory wasn't a weapon against her, it was a key to her freedom. She chose to forgive, and the wall in prayer broke. Suddenly, her intimacy with God deepened in a way she had never known. What she thought was God rejecting her was actually God protecting her heart until she was ready to release the pain. That's what happens when God reveals something. It's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new chapter. He never leaves us in the place of exposure. He walks with us into restoration. The Father is not shaming you when he brings something to light. He's inviting you into freedom. And every time he does, it's a sign that breakthrough is near. Resistance is one of God's greatest tools for revelation. We often pray for smooth paths, open doors, and effortless victories, but sometimes it is the very obstacles in front of us that show what's really inside of us. Pressure does not create what wasn't already there. It simply exposes it. Just like heat draws impurities out of gold, the resistance of life exposes doubt, insecurity, anger, or misplaced trust that may be hiding beneath the surface. And though it may feel uncomfortable, that exposure is actually a gift from God. It is his way of showing us what needs to be surrendered so that we can walk freely into the breakthrough he has prepared. Many people resent resistance. They think delays, closed doors, or opposition are signs that God is withholding something good. But what if resistance isn't rejection? What if it's God's X-ray? When you go through a trial, when things aren't moving as fast as you want, when you encounter obstacles again and again, it forces you to see what's happening inside. Does fear rise up? Does discouragement take over? Do you start to question God's goodness? The resistance reveals where your faith still needs strengthening. It shows you the areas where trust in yourself has replaced trust in him. Without that resistance, you might never know what was hiding in your heart. This is why what feels like delay is often God's protection. He knows that if he gave you what you asked for before the hidden obstacle was exposed, it could harm you. He allows resistance to surface those hidden barriers so that, with his help, you can surrender them. Only then are you truly prepared to steward the breakthrough. It is mercy disguised as difficulty. Think of a tree in a storm. The strong winds do not create weak roots. They simply reveal whether the roots are deep or shallow. If the roots are shallow, the tree topples over. If they are deep, the storm proves the tree's strength. Likewise, when resistance comes, it doesn't create fear, anger, or doubt. It simply exposes whether our roots are planted in God or in something else. And when God allows that revelation, It's not to shame us, but to call us deeper, to invite us to anchor more securely in Him. Here's an example. A young man had been praying for years for God to bless him with a business opportunity. He believed he was ready, yet every time a door seemed to open, it closed just as quickly. He grew frustrated and began questioning why God wasn't answering. During one of those moments of resistance, a friend asked him, "Why do you want this business so badly?" At first, he gave surface-level answers about providing for his family and making a difference. But under the pressure of resistance, he realized that much of his desire was rooted in proving himself to others, silencing the voices that once called him a failure. God was withholding the opportunity, not because He didn't want to bless him, but because He wanted to heal him first. If the business had come too soon, it would have been built on insecurity, and the weight of that insecurity could have crushed him. Once God exposed that hidden motive and the man surrendered it, the delay no longer felt like punishment. It felt like protection. That's how resistance works. It brings hidden things into the light. It's not God's rejection. It's His refinement. The very obstacles you're facing may be God's way of showing you what needs to be surrendered before you can walk into the promise. And when you see resistance that way, you no longer despise it. You thank God for it, because you realize that every challenge, every delay, every pushback is not keeping you from your breakthrough. It's preparing you for it. Breakthrough is not only about what God does on His side, it's also about how we respond on ours. God's power is limitless. His promises are sure, and His timing is perfect. But there is a vital part we play: alignment. Alignment is when our hearts, our attitudes, and our actions come into agreement with what God has revealed. We often pray for God to move, but breakthrough comes when we not only ask, but also align. To align with Him means surrendering our will, our control, and even our timeline to His purposes. Without that alignment, His blessings may come, but we won't be in a position to fully receive or sustain them. Surrender is the bridge between revelation and breakthrough. When God reveals an area that needs to change or an obstacle that needs to be removed, we can either resist Him or yield to Him. Yielding is not weakness, it's wisdom. It is saying, "God, I may not fully understand, but I trust your way is higher than mine." Too often, we want breakthrough without the discomfort of surrender. We want the door to open, but we don't want to release the baggage we're carrying. We want freedom, but we hold on to habits that bind us. Breakthrough requires that we align ourselves with God's plan, and that means letting go of what He asks us to release. When we align with Him, heaven's power flows unhindered. Think about electricity. If the wires are misaligned, power cannot flow properly. Even though the source is strong, the problem isn't with the power, it's with the connection. In the same way, God's power is always present, but misalignment through disobedience, fear, or stubbornness can disrupt the flow of that power in our lives. The moment we align, the current flows, and what once seemed impossible begins to shift. It's important to see that alignment isn't just about big, dramatic decisions. It often comes down to small, daily acts of obedience. It might mean forgiving someone you've been holding resentment against, even when they don't apologize. It might mean stepping out in faith to serve, even when you feel unqualified. It might mean shifting your priorities to put God first in areas where you've sidelined Him. These acts of surrender are what open the way for breakthrough. They signal to heaven, "I am ready for what you are about to do." Here's an example. A man had been praying for God to restore his marriage. He wanted breakthrough badly. He asked for it daily and he believed for it, but nothing changed. Then one night during prayer, God spoke to his heart. "You're asking me to heal your marriage, but you haven't surrendered your pride." He realized that even while asking for restoration, he continued blaming his spouse for everything, refusing to acknowledge his own faults. His breakthrough required alignment, owning his part, humbling himself, and seeking forgiveness. It wasn't easy. It went against every defensive instinct inside him. But when he surrendered, something shifted. The tension in his home began to break, and communication slowly reopened. The healing of his marriage began, not just because he prayed, but because he aligned with what God revealed. The power of heaven was waiting. It just needed the alignment of his heart to flow. This is the key. God is faithful to reveal, But it's our response of alignment that unlocks the next step. Breakthrough doesn't just come when we beg for it. It comes when we prepare for it by surrendering to God's way. Alignment positions us to receive what God has already prepared. And when we yield to Him, we discover that His plan isn't just to give us what we asked for, but to transform us into people who can carry the blessing with wisdom, strength, and grace. Every obstacle that God reveals in our lives is more than just an issue to overcome. It is an invitation to draw nearer to Him. When God points out something standing in our way, His ultimate goal is not only to clear the obstacle, but also to deepen our relationship with Him. We often approach God with the mindset of solving problems and removing barriers. We say, "Lord, take this away so I can move forward." But God's heart is different. He uses obstacles as opportunities to bring us closer, because His greatest desire is not just that we achieve success or reach a destination, but that we walk in intimacy with Him along the way. When an obstacle is revealed, the natural human response is frustration or disappointment. We think, "This is keeping me from my breakthrough. This is slowing me down." But from God's perspective, that obstacle is a doorway. He is saying, "Will you trust me here? Will you lean on me more deeply? Will you let me show you another side of my heart?" The issue is never just about the obstacle. It's always about the relationship. What God is after is not just a result, but your heart. Think of how Jesus interacted with people in the Gospels. Whenever someone brought Him a need, He often responded in a way that pulled them into relationship. When a blind man cried out, Jesus could have healed him instantly, but instead He asked, "What do you want me to do for you?" That question wasn't because Jesus didn't know. It was because He wanted the man to engage, to speak, to connect. The obstacle of blindness became the bridge to intimacy. That same principle is true in our lives. Every barrier is a call to draw near. Obstacles test our trust. When God reveals something in our path, it is rarely something we can fix on our own. That's intentional. If we could handle everything by ourselves, we would never need Him. He allows us to see obstacles because they become the context in which intimacy is built. They cause us to pray longer, to worship deeper, to listen more attentively, to lean more fully on His presence. And in that place of reliance, our relationship with Him grows stronger than it ever could in comfort and ease. Let me give you an example. A young woman felt called to step into ministry. She had a passion to preach, to encourage, and to lead others, but every time she took a step forward, she faced rejection. Opportunities she thought were certain fell apart. Leaders she admired didn't support her. At first, she thought these obstacles meant God had closed the door. But in prayer, God showed her that the obstacle wasn't rejection at all. It was an invitation. He was saying, "Before you lead my people, I want to lead you deeper into my presence. Before you stand on platforms, I want you to learn how to stand in my presence when no one else is watching." That season of resistance pushed her into hours of prayer and worship alone with God. She discovered intimacy with Him that she had never known before. And when the time finally came for doors to open, she wasn't desperate for validation anymore. She was anchored in the love of God. The obstacle she once resented became the very thing that drew her into a deeper relationship. That's the beauty of God's ways. He is not just trying to get us to a place of blessing. He is shaping us into people who know His heart. Every obstacle revealed is not just a barrier to breakthrough, it's a bridge to intimacy. It's God saying, "I want you closer. I want you to trust me here. I want you to experience my presence in a way you couldn't without this challenge." And when you respond to obstacles with surrender, you will discover that what looked like resistance was actually an invitation into the deepest kind of breakthrough intimacy with the Father.